the power of self-acceptance. And of course, what do I mean by self-acceptance? And what's the difference between self-acceptance and self-esteem? Self-esteem relates to how much you value yourself, and how positively or negatively you value yourself. And self-acceptance is about accepting the self you are right now and present, with all your warts, with all your faults, with all of our weaknesses. And so I wanted to talk about self-acceptance because it is a powerful dynamic in our healing. There are many who are on the broadcast and who are on this channel that have experienced narcissistic abuse. And they have been scapegoated. They've been abused by parents. Maybe they've grown up in alcoholic families, abusive families, and that really wounds our self-acceptance because that acceptance was not modeled for us by our parents or by our family, many of them. And if we don't have that modeled or imprinted for us in our family of origin, then guess what? We then grow up and not accept ourselves and become very self-rejecting, self-critical, hyper-vigilant about rejection, and we just feel worthless or unworthy. And that is a big problem, and it creates lots of pain for lots of people. Um, Again, self-acceptance is about accepting our problems, accepting our weaknesses, even accepting our reactivity, accepting my guilt, accepting my shame, accepting my fear of abandonment, accepting how I treat myself. Because even if we treat ourselves negatively, that's a part of self-acceptance. And what I found that self-acceptance is a means to growth and change. And that's what I use a lot when I work with folks. They'll tell me about problems that they have had, and they say, I just feel worthless. I don't know how to give up this feeling of worthlessness. I felt worthless when I was growing up, and then in relationships, I feel worthless. I end up finding people who reinforce that worthlessness, and it becomes a real problem. And then I think about, and so they're asking me, so Jerry, what can I do to not feel worthless? What can I do to accept myself? And I will mention that with almost all of the questions that I got via email, they were all how questions. And I think I've talked before about how questions, that oftentimes the question is when versus how. And so I'm going to be making that paradigm shift tonight as I talk about some of these questions. So when I work with someone, a client, and they're having difficulty with accepting themselves as being worthless, then what I want to do is I ask them, how do you feel about you feeling that you are worthless? How do you feel about that? Oh, I just hate it. And I'm just so mad. And I just can't believe that I still believe that. And they will make comments like that. And so what ends up happening is we have a double layered problem. First, we feel worthless. Then then we get the rejection from ourselves about feeling worthless. And so we then have two problems: how I feel and how I feel about how I feel. And now we have kind of a double bind, or that's not the correct phrase to use, double bind, that's a different type of thing, but it's still a double bondage where we are stuck in both layers. And so, what I will do to try to untangle that knot, because it ends up being a knot of I feel worthless and I also hate myself for feeling worthless because I always have, and I just can't get rid of it. So, therefore, I'm inadequate, can't deal with it. And we go on from there. And we just keep staying in that knot. So, I will begin to undo the knot by asking them, could you write down this statement? And I'll have them write down a statement of acceptance of where they are. And it's not always easy. And I'll say, please write down, I'm not yet ready to give up my worthlessness yet. And so they'll write it down. And sometimes they'll say, well, I don't like that. And sometimes they'll just be confused for a moment. And I'll say, would you read that back to me? And so then they go, okay, I'm not yet ready. I'm just reading what you're telling me, Jerry. I'm not ready to give up my worthlessness yet. And then often what I see is a little more calm, a little softness in the face, their shoulders going down, them relaxing a little more. And I will ask them, how do you feel right now? And they may say, well, I don't like that statement, but when I said it, I felt better. I felt more calm. Do you know why that is? Because now they don't have both layers of non acceptance. I'm worthless, plus I hate myself for being worthless. Now we just have the I'm worthless and I'm not ready to let it go yet, which also points to the future that they might be ready to let it go. And that can be a help to do that. Because then they're more hopeful because I'm saying not ready to let it go yet. Now, some people will say, I do feel better when I make that statement because it's also a self accepting statement. It really is a self accepting statement. I am not ready to let go of my worthlessness because they're not, or they wouldn't be asking me to help them with it. And you'll say, well, Jerry, if they, what do you mean that they're not ready? They're coming to you and telling you they're ready to let go of that. No, no, no. If they were ready to let go of it, they would have let go of it. So they're not yet ready to let go of it. And they shouldn't be criticized uh, or demonized or seen negatively or shamed. Good heavens, most of us have many things we're not ready to let go of. And that's okay. Can we accept ourselves for the things we're not ready to let go of? And that's healing through self-acceptance. And so what I'll ask them to do is say, well, and then they might argue a little bit and say, but I am ready to let go, Jerry. They need to somehow convince me that they really are ready to let go of it. And of course, I'm sitting over here going, I know you're not. I mean, I don't play the I'm all knowing person. I just know how my experience was. And I know that when you're not ready to let go, you're still going to feel it, whether it be anger, guilt, shame, worthlessness, negative self image. When you're not ready to let it go, um, we're not ready to let go. And wouldn't it be better if we accepted ourselves that we're not ready to let go than to keep criticizing ourselves, thinking we should let go, real grown adults let go, good people let go, only worthless people hang on to that. And we do all that negative self talk about our worthlessness rather than, wait a minute, I just have feelings of worthlessness. Well, so let me continue the scenario with the person. So then they say, well, I am ready to let it go. And I go, well, I will say you're 49% ready, 51% not ready. How about if we do that? And then they become more accepting of that. Then they start to see the importance of um, that. I think what Jerry means is if I was ready, I probably would have let that go. Oh, well, he may be right. He may be a 51-49 issue here. And that's all I'm saying. I'm saying There was 49% of you that brought you here and brought you to work with me as a coach and as a helper to help you to work through that. So there is a 49%, but there's a 51% of not yet being ready. And so we take the self acceptance. Can you accept yourself that you are not ready to let go of your worthlessness? Can you accept that? And I try to help them to accept that. Once they accept that, they kind of, again, more relaxed. They kind of think about that a little more. They're not as tense. They don't feel as anxious. And they go, why do I feel a little better just by doing that? And I said, because you're joining with yourself rather than rejecting yourself. And that will produce more results. And I even believe you can accept yourself into changing this. In other words, you can so accept that that you let it go. And so, what I tell them, I'd like you to read that statement. I'm not yet ready to give up my worthlessness or to change my worthlessness. I'm not yet ready. And um, then I say that 100 times at home. And then the next time we meet, I want to talk about that. So then they do it and they do it and they keep doing it and until they start realizing I have some control over this and that maybe I don't have to feel so worthless. And maybe it's okay if I feel worthless. It's okay if I let it go. That's self acceptance. If you can accept that you feel worthless and that you accept I can let it go and I have the power to do that. That's self acceptance in a healing form. And then I will also encourage them, and this may be another help for those who are interested in that, to say, if if you let go of your worthlessness or non self acceptance, self hate, whatever, if you let go of that, what would be the downsides? And can we explore the paradoxical side of letting your worthlessness go? Because there's a paradoxical side. I have some people are 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 very afraid to be free of something that has been with them all of their life, like the feeling of worthlessness. Or I don't know what I would feel. I don't know what I would feel if I didn't feel worthless. What would take its place? Who would I be if I wasn't worthless? I've felt worthless since I was a child. Now you're asking me to let that go. Will I just have a vacuum? Will I not know who I am? Well, I don't know who I am. If I give up my worthlessness, I might be more empowered, and that might change some relationships. It might change what I'm doing. That sounds scary, so I think I'll play the worthless role and keep the worthless feelings. And often, many times, these feelings that we're struggling with are systems feelings. Um, and I think, yeah, someone just mentioned if they gave up, self hate or whatever, and they would definitely feel a lot of self blame. And again, uh, that can be very troubling. I've had people say, "Well, if I give up my feelings of worthlessness, if I give up my worthlessness, and that actually happens, I will hate myself for not doing it sooner." So, see, we always come around to that acceptance part versus, well, that we need to talk through that fear and talk through that difficulty so that you can begin to let that go without all these tentacle things coming in and pushing you another direction. And I have had people that's been, if I gave up my worthlessness, I would hate it because then I would feel so guilty that I never did it sooner. Or I'd be mad at those other 5 therapists I had who never helped me with that very much. Um, and I'd be mad at them. I'd be mad at my parents for imprinting me with that. I would be, and so to keep from all that happening, I'll just stay worthless. And so we unpack those so that we have the freedom to take. Oh, I had a cut of my finger today. We have freedom to take that worthlessness that we hold on so tightly, so dearly, and to let it go. And that's, a very dynamic and healing thing to let that go. And so I work with clients to help them do that and go beyond self hate, guilt, shame, all those negative feelings, and also not liking themselves. Because again, part of the problem we have is we have problems, and then we also hate ourselves for having the problem. Well, let's deal with one layer at a time, or let's just deal with one layer rather than both layers that keep things in place. And so I that's my acceptance therapy or acceptance coaching that I use with folks. And it has been pretty dynamic, pretty powerful. It was for me and myself because, I remember when Reggie, a therapist I had, Dr. Stoneberg, I had different therapists, and they would help me with that. And boy, I was resistant too. What do you mean you mean just accept me as I am right now? Well, that's horrible. Why should I accept me as I am right now? I'm trying to not be as I am right now. Can you help me do that? He said, yes. How about we accept you as you are right now? No, no, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do that. It's crazy. And I would put up a lot of resistance. Once I started lessening my resistance, I started to feel more myself, more grown up, more mature, more accepting of myself, less worried about what everybody else thought. Um, and people say, and if somebody says, well, you're just, well, Jerry, you're just codependent. Oh, okay. I think you're right. That is a part of who I am. You're absolutely right. Now the weapon's gone. I mean, I accept that about me. I would like to continue to grow and to heal, but I accept that because I am accepting me. I'm accepting me. Um, Another part of self acceptance is about connecting with yourself, loving and caring yourself about yourself. That's not easy to do, but there's a lot of people, me certainly was included, and still struggle with it. I do. But loving yourself and caring about yourself is an intention, it's a choice. And you can't just wait for it to happen. And a lot of people are thinking, well, if I go to this therapy, if I do this, then I'll love me. If I stop smoking, if I stop going to the casino, if I start going to church, then I'll love myself. No, loving yourself starts now, right where you are, and it's an intentional choice. And most people um, don't haven't made that choice. They've not even they don't even believe it is a choice. They don't even believe it is a choice. And I have a lot of people, because so many times people say, "Well, how do I love myself? I don't know how." And I said, "The thing is, it's not a how question. It's like saying, Jerry, with this, and I think I've used the example before, the pen. How do I drop this pen?" And somebody will say, well, let go of both of your fingers. And I said, well, I did that. And they'll go, well, how do you, and then I'll ask again, but how do I drop the pen? I don't know how to drop the pen. And then they'll tell me, well, release them at the same time. And I'll go like this, and I'll still hold on to it. And what they don't realize is look what's going on. Um, Look what's going on. You're asking me, or I'm asking you, how to do something that is within my power to do, which is to drop the pen. And I'm asking you how to make me have the power to do that. Well, that's pretty tricky. I mean, you have to let all your fingers go. I mean, and then the pen will drop like that. And it's like, and that's what we often do when we ask these questions. We'll ask, how do I drop the pen? And I keep saying, you will whenever you're ready. How can we midwife you into having that birth of dropping the pen? That's what, because nobody's going to drop that pen for you. I can't drop the pen for you. I can't grab it out of your hands and throw it down. It's something we have to choose, and you can choose. It is a work. It is an intention, and it is a work. But a lot of people are waiting for the work to just happen rather than, no, I'm going to start doing that today. I will begin to drop this pen. Now, I may pick it up again, but there's no sense me asking you how to do it because I'm the one that can do it. I'm within that power and control to do that. And just like loving and caring yourself is an intentional choice. So we have to make that choice. And what day are you going to start making that choice? When are you going to plan on doing that? Yesterday, today, tomorrow, a year from now? You can do it anytime you want. You can also accept yourself to say, you know, I think I'm not ready to accept and love myself. I'm not yet ready to accept and love myself. Okay, let's start there. That's a perfect place to start. Let's accept that you're not ready and keep reinforcing the acceptance of that. And then you might see a change. You might see a change if you can accept that part of you. Because I don't let anybody come and go, I'm just too weak to do it. Because I look at them and I go, there was nobody weaker than me in terms of being codependent, a mess, didn't know where I was at, didn't know where I was going, didn't know who I was, didn't know what I wanted, just trying to please everybody, over functioning, and living a all kinds of crazy life. And that's, if I can do it, anybody can do it. And I truly believe that. I'm not magical and I'm not special in that way. There may be some learning or educating I've done that might be a little different than other people, but I still have to do the same work that I tell you about and that everybody has to do. It's no different. It's not like I get exempt because I teach it. I don't get exempt. There is no exemption. Life is life. And that's what I like about Bowen Family Systems. Um, and I think here's another thing, how is your weakness or problem, which is another way to accept your weaknesses and problems, a solution. How are your weaknesses and problems a solution? That begins to take the negativity out of those, our faults, our weaknesses, our problems, because we want to take the negativity out of it. Uh, we want to go into accepting them and trying to understand, how is this a solution for me? And that you've made mistakes. I have failed. I have made mistakes, very bad choices. There's plenty of things in my life that I probably would like to redo if I could, but that's not going to happen. Um, and um, and that, but it wasn't because I was worthless or faulty or dumb or stupid. And by the way, these are all systems phrases. Just like there's systems feelings, there's system phrases. And so the family of origin will teach us some of these systems and phrases. The feeling systems, systems feelings, and systems phrases or thoughts. And I thought, well, that must be why I had to file bankruptcy back in 1980, whenever it was, because I was worthless and stupid and dumb and faulty and weak. And no, it had a history. There was definitely a history to it of where I was going, what I was trying to do, and what was not wise for me to do. And when we have these mistakes or bad choices, they're not because you're stupid, worthless, or bad. It's they're simply things you don't know about yourself yet. That's how they're useful. There are things you don't know about yourself, especially when we act out or when we have partners, we choose poor partners, or that I really think that uh, that's what helps us to use our weaknesses, our mistakes, our bad choices for learning rather than shaming and guilting and slamming ourselves. How can we learn from those? And many of us have made some pretty big mistakes. And so that's not easy when we've had failures or when we've had some failure in our life. Um, the we want to also learn and explore where we learned non-acceptance, where we learn not to accept ourselves. And of course, we go back to not blaming the family, but examining the family. It's not about blaming the parents. It's not about blaming anyone. It's about acknowledging where we learn things. Um, and I even remember talking to my mom about that. I was asking her about, I think this is kind of where I learned these things about me. But I wasn't saying it to her in a blaming way. I wasn't going, and it's all your fault and you're evil and just, this is, but I do accept this is where I learned them. And I think that was a part of me. And so I was confident in saying that's where I learned these things. Um, so we want to examine, where did we learn that non-acceptance? When did we first saw ourselves as bad, faulty, weak, worthless, broken, imperfect, unacceptable? When did we learn that? And can we go back and can we begin to clean that out? And what I think of is like going back into the heart where there's a blockage and there's a blockage there, and we have this blockage of learning to not accept ourselves. And then going up there, with a stent and putting a stent in there so the blood can flow freely again. It doesn't change the fact that we had a blockage, but it allows us to be healthy. We can't change what happened in the past, but we can go back and learn, where did we learn that? And can we challenge that learning? If your mother, I was talking to a client recently, her mother was always telling her that her daughter, that she didn't love her and that she never will love her and that she's a worthless daughter. I mean, there was even some very severe things like, you know, I wish I'd have strangled you when I had you, some very horrible abuse that she got as a kid, and so she really did internalize the lack of self acceptance and learned that from mom. And um, when you say that, uh, somebody mentioned the post that I had with the gun pointing out at the audience, talking about reusing the bullets on ourselves that we got from others, or we use the same bullet. And so the mom shoots the daughter loads her gun and shoots herself with the same bullet. The non-self acceptance, unworthy, mom was right, I shouldn't even exist, I shouldn't even be here. That can be intentionally changed if we begin to look at that in an intentional way. Um, and so we go back and learn. We go back and grieve the loss of those experiences because they're awful, very painful. Sharing them with someone else, a coach, a therapist, a good, mature friend, a pastor, and so that we can, in some ways, exorcise ourselves and to allow that to be heard by someone else so it's not a shaming experience. Can you talk about your childhood with someone else, as painful as it is, and they are accepting of that, helps to reduce the shame of that and also helps to have someone standing in for the world. And many times I feel like I stand in for the world for this person. They were taught they don't even exist. They shouldn't even exist in this world, is what they were taught. And I want to stand in for the world and go, yeah, you do. You deserve to be here. Yeah, you're imperfect. Hey, but no, you're a good person. You do deserve to be here. What you heard from your parents, what you heard from your siblings, what you heard from other friends, bullying, whatever, you know, that's that's all noise. It was painful noise, but it's all noise. And what do you want to do about that noise? And what do you want to do about the pain of that noise? Can you grieve through that and accept a new you and intentionally go, that isn't me. I do deserve to exist. I do deserve to be alive. You had me just because your mom didn't want you doesn't mean you don't deserve to be here. It means that mom had lots of issues or dad had lots of issues and and that he wasn't well enough to be able to love you as a child should be loved. That's all that says. It doesn't mean you don't deserve to be in the world. It just means you had very faulty parents who many of them have their own mental health issues and dysfunctional issues of their own, and probably have had generational issues that have come down to you. I think it's also very important if we can lower our expectations of others, because that will help you lower your expectations for you. Because many times I find people to accept themselves, they need to lower their expectations in a healing way. And so to lower their expectations on others will help lower their expectations for themselves. And I'm not saying we can't be ambitious or great or do good things or strive for things, but many times we're perfectionistic, we overfunction, we may underfunction in some ways, and we need to keep those expectations realistic. And I think if we can lower our expectations, we can then see, oh, well, if mom or dad or siblings or others can be faulty and they're not going to change or they're not perfect, well, maybe I'm not either. Maybe I'm not perfect either and don't have to be. You don't have to be perfect. That isn't a requirement for making life work. In fact, trying to be perfect is a good way to make life not work very well. It has a paradoxical power within our life. We want to reparent ourselves, and many people talk about reparenting. I did find another small book you might be interested in. It's called Parent Yourself Again by Yong Kang Chan, and you can buy it online. It's a good little book and it's short. I do like the Margaret Paul books on inner bonding. I like uh, Charles Whitfield on inner child work. There's reparenting books out there that can help explain to you what reparenting is. And basically, what it is we've gotten the one bullet from our parents, let's say. We don't reload the gun. We get rid of the gun, get rid of the bullet, and start going to the spa. That's reparenting yourself because that's what you needed rather than to be shot. Um, so we can do something about how we're going to deal with ourselves. And then bonding with the inner child is another part of acceptance. And I do like Margaret Paul's um, book on inner bonding and her workbook. And she also gives you some very specific ways you can get in contact with your inner child and your inner self and your inner adult. And I would recommend you check out her Margaret Paul, Paul. She could help you. And that's also a part of a self acceptance, too. I had believe it or not, it was a client in Russia. and he was a very experienced professional and very well respected in his field. And we were working, and we were doing some inner child, inner adult work. And he had written this whole letter about his parents, and he thought he would just be reading it with numbness and with no feelings to it, because basically he'd been taught to be numb. And then he found himself becoming overwhelmed as he began to read it to me, and he began to explore his inner child. He began to understand the difference between his adult and his child. And he said he never knew that was ever possible. And again, this kind of professional, he had been around, but he never knew that was really a healing possibility, or was even possible that he could even see himself that way. And it was very clarifying for him and very emotional as well. So I like to do, inner child work and things like that with clients when it's appropriate. Certainly, we want to resist black and white thinking, because we'll get really self-critical, with that black and white thinking. There's also that inner critic that we have. We have that inner critic part, particularly if we grew up, um, with dysfunctional families. That inner critic becomes a part of us. That's part of that gun shooting off back at ourselves, and beginning to stop that inner critic and resist it rather than just letting it go pell-mell and devil may care. I mean, we're just letting it do whatever, and then we're going to, will someone help us with this? Yes, are you willing to help and resist that? Can you resist that inner critic that you have? Um, One of the things that normal people, whoever normal people are, but one of the things that normal people do is they love themselves no matter what. They have learned to love themselves. So if they make a mistake, if they fail, if they trip and stumble, they still value and merit themselves. They're not happy with their failures, or they're not happy with their mistakes, but they have a basic sense of loving themselves that was imprinted in them when they were growing up. We now can imprint that in us. And as I've said, it's never too late to have a happy childhood. Let's start imprinting it now. And I think that's really important. I also was reading Self Acceptance is a Key to Happiness. If you really want to be happy, Robert Holden, the author of Happiness Now, says happiness and self acceptance go hand in hand. Your level of self acceptance determines your level of happiness. The more self acceptance you have, the more happiness you will allow yourself to accept, receive, and enjoy. In other words, you enjoy as much happiness as you believe you're worthy of. And I like Robert Holden, Holden, the author of Happiness Now, and he talks about the importance of self acceptance. And that's why I gave you that illustration with the client that I had um, early on in our talk tonight. So you kind of understand how I really try to use that acceptance therapy, that acceptance work, as very important. Because most people, and I don't even think, I think there's a lot of therapists who don't even kind of work in that way. Um, and I think that's unfortunate because, again, what I think is when I've gone to family systems type of therapists or Bowen therapists, those kind of folks, um, that they have an understanding of self. They have more of an understanding of self and what to do with self. And I think that's what's helped me in my work and in my growth. There is a couple of books, that another couple of books I thought I might recommend. Ronald Richardson is a pastor and he's a Christian author, but he is a Bowen Family Systems person. And he writes the book Becoming Your Best, a self help guide for thinking people. And I like his, uh, I like what he describes in there. I think his book, like chapter 5, anxiety, calmness, and being a self, he talks about that. And self knowledge, happiness, and the character in relationships. Um, and I just like what he has to say, Ronald Richardson. He also in chapter 4 is why do we fail to do good? And uh, he has a good discussion of that. Uh, and here's one thing I circled: um, principles as an antidote to feeling-based life. And I think that's a good comment on self-differentiation, that we really do want to live out of what we believe, or what we believe is true, what we believe is good, not just what our feelings-based life is telling us, which with reactivity, negativity, and all those kinds of things. And doing a principles-based life with other people versus just a feelings-based life, which then gets really crazy and really a mess, as some of you know. And then there's another book. Some of you have probably already heard this one. Will I Ever Be Good Enough? By Carlisle, Carly Mc, Car, Carrie. I don't know how to pronounce her. McBride is her last name. Carly, Carlo. Not sure how to say that. Healing the Daughters of Narcissistic Mothers, and it's a good book, and I think it's a very good book to read, whether you're a daughter of a narcissistic mother or a son, or if you've had struggles with that. Will I Ever Be Good Enough by McBride. So let me take a look at some questions. I hope that was a help to get started, and I hope my example at the beginning was a help as to how to use acceptance as a means of healing. Acceptance is so important. Let me give you, if I can give you another example of acceptance. So um, when people come to me and they then tell me about, well, I've got this narcissistic father and he's a mess and he doesn't care about me, and I'm trying to work out a relationship with him, but it's so hard because he's so critical and it just drives me crazy. Jerry, what can I do? Do you know how I formulate that problem at that point when someone shares that? One thing they don't have is acceptance. They don't have acceptance of their father. They don't have acceptance of themselves. Now, what do you mean, Jerry? They just describe to you what their father's like. Well, they may be able to describe it, but that's not acceptance. Do you accept that your father is narcissistic and then put the fantasies to bed? Can you accept he probably won't change? He's narcissistic. This is the most he can do. He can't do any more. Are you ready to give up the fantasies of what you hope he will be? That's an acceptance issue. Can you accept a father just the way he is? Because if you accept the dad just the way he is, then you'll know how to relate to him and what to do. If you don't accept him how he is, then you'll either always try to be changing him or always try to be changing you to make him change. And that's going to keep you in a knot forever. And then I go, do you accept yourself that this is how your father sees you? That's probably not going to change. Can you accept him in that way? And can you accept you in who you are? And many times both are missing. And so that's an acceptance issue because many people ask me, "Well, how do I deal with this?" Well, then let's do this. Let's accept your father as he is. Crazy as he is, bad as he is, toxic as he is, mean as he is, whatever he is. Let's learn to accept you, then you will have the answer as to what to do. If I just told you the answer, it wouldn't work in the paradigm that you have right now. Because your paradigm is, I want him to change. I'm trying to work out a way to have a better relationship with him, and he kind of doesn't. And I do because I still need him. And I think he still loves me. And there's just all kinds of confusion and distortion in there. And then when I throw in, let's say, a mature uh, answer to the question, it doesn't fit in that paradigm. And then the client or the person goes, well, I don't know. What are you talking about? What do you mean, Jerry? Because they're not going to know what I mean. So we have to go through stages. Let's do the acceptance work first, and you will come to the answer. I can be of assistance, but you really will come to know. The problem isn't what your dad is doing. The problem is what your distorted paradigm is doing. That's what the problem is. And again, I'm not saying the dad's a, let's say dad, I talk about moms a lot, but let's say the dad's mean and fickle and just doesn't, you know, doesn't support this person very much. And, he may not be a good guy at all. But what you're telling me is I want to have a good relationship or a better relationship with this guy who's not good at all. And I'm going, okay, how can I do that? How am I going to do that? Okay, well, how about if we give you some Thorazine and then you'll be completely out and then you can have a relationship that you're dreaming about with him? Because, it's very hard to have a good relationship with someone who's very mean and very bad. I don't know how to make a good relationship out of that. All I know is how to help you be yourself. And then you can decide what kind of relationship you want to have with them and what's really possible. Um, I have a question. How do I release the regret I hold for not showing up my best due to family dysfunction? I've gone through a journey of recognizing family of origin dysfunction and how that shows up in me and my own family. And after experiencing all the emotional up and downs, all I want to do is forgive, make peace, and let it all go. Well, this is from MK. And I think, again, we're talking about a how question. And what do I say when there's a how question? And it doesn't mean there are no decent or reasonable how questions. It's never, again, everybody, it's never either or all or nothing. Sometimes I'll say certain things and and people will say, oh, well, what about this part? And I'll go, well, yes, of course, that's true too. But I'm trying to say something this far over here so people can understand it back to this level. So I'm overstating it. And just like with the how questions, I like to look at when. So it's better to say, I'm not, all I want to do is forgive, make peace, and let it go. Um, when actually it is some of what I want to do is forgive and make peace and let it go. And that sum is 49%. 51%, I am not ready to forgive, I'm not ready to make peace, and I'm not ready to let it go. Because I think there's some downsides if you do, and I would suggest you explore those. Um, because you will release the regret and all of those when you're ready. There is a way to get ready, and as I discussed at the beginning, there's some ways to begin to get ready to do that because the power is yours to let go. I wish I was the magician and made people do certain things, when actually I'm more of a midwife. I try to help them accept themselves into better behavior. Um, then I have one from KJ. How do you accept yourself when you have never learned how, and it feels wrong in every fiber of your being? Do we have another how question? You know what I'm going to say. It's when. When are you going to be ready? When are you going to choose to accept yourself? I understand you did not learn how to do that as a child. I accept yourself. I know that you've gone through experiences of non acceptance for yourself. Uh, but that doesn't mean you can't start now. It does not mean you forever can never accept yourself. That's not the curse that we have. Um, Now, it may feel wrong in every fiber of your being. And I think that would be something worthy of exploring to explore that, the uh, explore what am I feeling in every part of my being when I try to accept myself? What what would my every fiber of my being say? What are the words being said? What are the downsides of healing? What are the downsides of accepting yourself? Um, and I understand if you've never learned, there's nothing wrong with going and getting the books on what is normal by Friels, Friel. They have and reading some books about what does it mean to love yourself. It's okay to do some reading and learning about loving yourself. Um, I think that some of it is common sense. And again, common sense comes with our paradigm. And sometimes common sense doesn't always come with our paradigm. But, you know, what would I like? What do I need? What if I would accept myself just the way I am? How am I? Can I go, that's okay. That's where I am right now. Or I've learned how to do this, or I grew up in my family of origin learning this. So this is why it's normal for me. And I'm going to begin to not criticize myself or reject myself when I want to accept myself, because we will push it away. There's no doubt we will push it away. We've learned many games to push away that acceptance, that self-acceptance. We've learned many things throughout our lives. Um, and this is from CD. How do you accept that your son doesn't want to take responsibility for his life, and instead of doing that, he blames his mother, me, for all of his failures because of the boundary setting I have done? I think is how it might have ended. Uh, because the boundary setting that she has done. And I'm going, well, I don't know how to accept it, but I can suggest you might want to begin accepting it. Um, he doesn't want to take responsibility for his life. Can I accept my son that he doesn't want to take responsibility for his life? And instead of doing that, he blames me. So he wants to continue to stay stuck by blaming me. That will do it. He'll stay stuck as long as he blames you. And he may be upset about your boundary setting and doesn't think you're loving him or caring about him. Now, if he's an adult, you don't have any other obligation to him other than to be an adult with him, um, and that uh, and that it is very difficult. I would go, what would keep you from accepting that your son doesn't want to take responsibility for his own life? And what would keep you from accepting that your son only wants to blame you for his failings or his failures? Isn't that what someone does who's immature? Isn't that what someone done when they have anger issues and resentment issues and they're not ready to move past that? Isn't that what a child does when they don't want to become an adult? The best way to not become an adult is keep blaming your parents. That's one of the best ways of staying immature. Now, I'm not saying your parents were not a part of your life and did not affect you. Of course they did. But the act of blaming is the act of shifting from self to others. And you're only going to get out of it if you shift to self, not to others. And blaming is a way to distract from what you need to do. Your son wants to distract from what he needs to do. It's easier to blame you, mom. It's much easier. And maybe you did fail. Maybe I'm sure you have. I think every parent has. I have. We have all failed at parenting. Um, but that doesn't mean I deserve to be blamed. He may blame me, but I'm not going to absorb the blame. I want to observe the blame, not absorb it. Um, and I want to observe that he is not taking responsibility for his life, not absorb that he's not taking responsibility for his life, because it's not yours to absorb. He has to finally see at some point, and maybe the universal life will come to him where um, he will see, but he may need to hit bottom to do it. And what you have to do is let him go and to detach. And there's nothing wrong with letting him go, emotionally letting him go, um, and letting him find his way. Obviously, he thinks you've caused all the problems. So, I would even tell my son, well, if you think I've caused all the problems, why do you keep complaining to me? Because I'm the one that caused your problems. What? Why are you trying to get the answer out of me? Um, and that's rather silly. You might want to go somewhere else to get your answers. 'Cause remember how bad a parent I was. So you might want to let me go and find your answers elsewhere. You might see a therapist, a coach, a counselor, someone around that can help you with that because you keep blaming me like that will help you somehow. I just don't know how it's going to help you. And because I don't know how it's going to help me. Maybe you dumping on me helps you, but the difficulty is when you dump on me, you then just continue to repeat the pattern and you don't heal and you don't grow. So you may not want to just dump those blaming feelings on me. I'm happy to take whatever responsibility I need to take for being a parent. I'll take that if I made those mistakes, if I was gone, if I worked too much, if I made those bad choices, if I took too much time away from the home. Hey, if I was abusive, if I was mean, if I was selfish, take full responsibility for all that. And I do apologize, and I will take full responsibility. Um, However, the process of continued blaming will get you nowhere and will get me nowhere. So, if you'd like to pick up our relationship after you've decided about that, I'd be happy to do that. And I love you, always will love you. Whenever you want to have a relationship with this very faulty, weak parent that you had, who is now an adult, as you are now an adult, um, that I'd be happy to have a relationship with you. But it has to be adult to adult. Because actually, I'm no longer your parent. If you're an adult, I'm no longer your parent. I'm your father, I'm your mother, but I'm not your parent. Parenting's over. Parenting is done. And so if you're looking for a parent, and oftentimes blaming kids are looking for a parent, uh, and they're not going to find it. and they're not going to find it in you either. So I hope that helps. AM sent a question. How do I reduce my sensitivity? I take things deeply personally, both praise and criticism. So my self-esteem fluctuates according to external feedback. Um, Now she goes on to talk about her workplace and those kinds of things. She also talks about her, how do I not care so much about my own experience and that of my clients? She works in a disability group home and that sort of thing. Um, so let me talk about that sensitivity. I want to make the difference, and maybe I can make a difference with sensitivity and reactivity. Um, Sensitivity, we can kind of be intuitive sensitive. We can be sensitive to the feelings of others. You know, there, we talk about being an empath, in which we are very strongly empathic. Um, and so there is sensitivity. Then there's reactivity. And reactivity is where I tend to, like she was saying, fluctuate her self-esteem with according to external feedbacks. If somebody says she's doing great, she has a great day and really feeling good. Somebody says she's doing not so good or there's some problems, then we feel down in the dumps and we're way low in terms of self-esteem. So I really recommend that we change that locus of control. I'm also going to be doing a new video that's going to be on this topic as well about taking things personally, both praise and criticism. Um, One way to reduce becoming over dependent, or excuse me, overreactive to criticism is work on your overreaction to praise and keep that down. It seems counterintuitive, but it can help in terms of being overreactive or overreactive to criticism. Um, but we want to change the locus of our focus, the center of our control from external to internal. Um, and if we make that internal, where I take the ruler in which I measure myself, and a ruler is a stick that you measure things with. Is the measurement outside or is it inside? Do you do you have an internal ruler? Do you decide whether you've done well today or not done well today? I had a client recently who works in the oil industry. We've had some oil industry price crashes, and she was talking about a professional review that she got. She had only worked for the company for 57 days, and an immature supervisor uh, treated it like a year-long review. So they expected her to have all these things done that you could have done if you worked there a year. And so he was saying, you're falling behind here, you're not doing this, you're not doing that. She'd only been there 57 days. So how could I have had all of that done? Nobody here can even do that. Not even you, the supervisor, not anybody could do that within. And she used to be so codependent, so sensitized to criticism that she has grown to be able to go, wait a minute, it did not hurt like it would have hurt in the past. I had come to realize, wait a minute, this is unrealistic expectations. This is not fair. And this is not correct. And I'm not going to view myself through this filter. I'm not going to view myself through this filter. So um, she really went into that review and came out. and she's going to do an addendum to it and share, this you doesn't say anything here in this review that I've only been here 57 days and I've had many and lots of job shifts and changes as they've been moving me around that I couldn't have done this rather than just look how she's fallen short. Well, it wasn't a realistic evaluation. And so she took her internal ruler and decided whether this was right, wrong, good, or bad. Am I doing well or am I not? And she had decided she had done well. This was just a misplaced and misdirected review. And I think 2 years ago, she would have been devastated, thought she probably should quit, very insecure, and all those kinds of things. And then AM asked, how do I not care so much? Both about my own experience and about that of other clients. I really think that is a common and contagious thing, that over-sympathizing, over-empathizing, over-sympathizing. And I'm one who believes it's good to empathize. I'm one who believes we should care about other people. It is important to care about other people, but not over care, because whenever you go an inch into over care, then you are taking away from yourself. That is a de-selfing move when you over empathize, over sympathize. That is too, when you go over that, whatever distance you go over that, that's de-selfing in there. Nothing wrong with caring, nothing wrong with empathizing, but when we over empathize, because we also want to have, I think someone has written something about humility. We also want to have humility that it's not my job to care about the entire world. I, I, I don't know how to do that. I really don't. There are lots of problems going on. There's lots of issues, lots of things happening. I can't care about the whole world. I just can't. I mean, people in disability group homes, people in nursing homes, people who have coronavirus, people who have, just, people in poverty, um, people who are, starving, people. I can't care about all of them. Um, it doesn't mean I have no caring, but I have the humility that I can't fix all of the world's problems, and that the universe, God, is going to have to do those things, and that we all together can work together to fix those things. But many times our focus is on something else. Well, I can't make the focus for everyone change. I've had lots of people come to me and want me to, join them in their campaigns for all kinds of things. And it's like, I don't have that much energy to join the campaign for everything that needs to change. I just don't even know how to do that. And that's really difficult. So, working on not caring so much, it seems like Edwin Friedman talks about that in The Failure of Nerve. Um, and Edwin Friedman has some good uh, discussions in his book about being overly sympathetic. He was a therapist. He was a family therapist. He was a rabbi. He was a very caring person, and very good at family systems. He also uh, extolled the lack of virtue in over sympathizing and over empathizing, and how problematic that could be, and how unhealthy or how unchristian, how unreligious. He really did a good job of that. By the way, I'm not shaming anybody about that. I've certainly spent my lifetime over caring so many times, and I know how difficult that can be to change that. Edwin, Edwin, Friedman, Friedman, Generation to Generation, The Failure of Nerve, and oh, there's the Shishka book. Ooh, the I thought I remember that. Sorry, I can't remember the title of it. The Shishka. But if you look up Edward Friedman, you'll see all of his books. SK talks about what would be a self-differentiated way to express my displeasure that my adult daughter is lying about me to my friend and and at a doctor's office. One thing she tells them is that I have Munchausen's disease. She also tells them I did not have a stroke because I do not act like a former neighbor who must have had a stroke, even though this has been validated by an MRI. She accuses me of lying about messages I received from a doctor's office and says I want my grandson in pain since I was following what I was told by a staff person about not giving him narcotics. It turned out later that the doctor and the staff person were not on the same page regarding their patient instructions. I have been livid and very reactive. It happened 2 weeks ago. It happened 2 weeks later, again after the first episode. I have told her she has to move out. I will no longer help her with transportation to or from school for her son, giving him medication, taking him to appointments, taking him to friends or swim class, etc. I do not help people who treat me with such disrespect. Why would someone act like this? Well, I think there's could be lots of reasons why someone might act like that. They have lots of pain from the past. They may be neurotic and just have old issues, and they just live out of those old issues. They may be narcissistic. They may be selfish. They may have narcissistic traits, um, and or they may have some personality disorder. Because if you're going to lie about mom and lie about this and lie about that, they could be bipolar. There could be lots of reasons why um, the someone could be acting like that. Um, what would a self-differentiated way to express your displeasure? And I think you can totally withdraw and cut off like that if you want to. Um, I think that I would take a look at, given this is the way my daughter wants to treat me, what is the minimal amount of safe interaction I could have with her? So I could see my grandson or whatever. Okay, we'll just go to McDonald's and that's all we'll do. And I'll meet you at McDonald's and I get to see the grandson. Not too much can happen at that point. If your daughter, SK, if your daughter is still out of control and, just abusive, mean, and continues to do that kind of behavior, then you might want to think about the no contact as a choice and going no contact. That can be a difficult choice, but it could be one where I'm not going to be treated this way. It's just not fair. I have tried to, be helpful. And I have many parents who try to be very, very helpful. Maybe they have narcissistic kids and they just get abused by their kids, even though they try to help lots of people and try to help their family. And then they end up getting lied about and mistreated. And we really do need to withdraw from those relationships, at least take a break. And then we can kind of regroup and go, what's really important here? What do I want to do? What's possible to do? Does my daughter need to value my help and my relationship with her more because she's not? And she really does need to value that more. Well, let's see how she does without it. And she can decide whether that help is valuable or not. But I'm not going to keep doing these things if I'm going to be treated so poorly. And so I don't blame you for that kind of withdrawal to say, hey, you're going to have to do what you want to do then, because obviously you're not happy with me. You think I'm lying. You think I'm taking patient instructions about your son wrongly from the doctor, and you're not at all willing to be reasonable. And I think that's a shame. And I'm sorry to hear that, SK, that you have a daughter that you have to deal with who is just so much in pain, either personality disordered or so much in pain that she's not ready to get help for herself and just believes that you are the problem, which is, sounds like what she wants to do, that you're the difficult one and you are the problem. I hope you will join my website, www.jerrywiserelationshipsystems.com. Strangely enough, I even found someone who was playing a song from an album that I did back in 1979. And they were playing one of the songs from that album and showed the record playing. It was so bizarre. I was really surprised that somebody had that album and was playing it and posted it up on Instagram. So I thought that was quite amazing. Hope you have a great night, and we will see you soon again.